In terms of cherry picking, I mean, people all the time, especially when it comes to the Old Testament, people will take one verse here and ignore the other 5 verses around it in the same passage that says that that a male should not sleep with a male. In Leviticus also says you should not wear a shirt made of 2 different kinds of fabric. Well, I'm sorry, but why do you have all these protesters about against pride parades, but you don't have protesters against shirt makers? And the other one we talked about recently is people insist that we have to keep the 10 commandments. One of them is you cannot work on the Sabbath day. That's Saturday. You're not allowed to work. Yeah, well that doesn't apply anymore. That's my point.
That's convenient.
You're picking the one you don't want to keep for other reasons and saying that one doesn't apply. Why not say the other ones don't apply?
This one is going to be a little longer, but stick with me till the end. And if you haven't subscribed or followed, what are you waiting for? Why do Christians seem to follow some of the commands from the Old Testament, but not others? This video makes it appear like Christians are arbitrarily or maybe even nefariously picking and choosing the commands that they like while ignoring the ones they don't. So for example, Christians seem fine with the law against homosexual behavior in Leviticus 18, but then seem to ignore the command against wearing clothes with 2 different fabrics in the next chapter in Leviticus. How convenient. The problem with this characterization is it doesn't accurately represent Christianity. It's a straw man, and a Bible scholar like Dr. Bart Ehrman should know better. If you actually want to understand why Christians believe homosexual behavior is sinful, but wearing 2 different fabrics isn't, you need to understand the covenants. More specifically, the Old Testament contains the Mosaic Law. These were laws given by God through Moses to the chosen people of Israel to accomplish a very specific purpose. That part is really important. This is part of what we call the Old Covenant. It was a contract between 2 parties, God and the Jewish nation, and it includes specific commands and rules that are unique to their circumstance. Now, this may surprise you, but New Testament Christians don't live under the Old Covenant. They're under a different covenant, a new covenant. When Jesus came, he fulfilled the requirements of the law, and he established a new covenant through his death and resurrection. That's really important too. Under this new covenant, we can wear clothes with 2 different fabrics, and it's not because Christians are arbitrarily picking and choosing which commandments to follow. No, it's because Christians are following commands that apply to them under the new covenant. See your New Testament for more details. Okay, Tim, are you saying a command like thou shalt not murder doesn't apply to us because that was the old covenant? Here's what I am saying. No command from the Mosaic Law is incumbent upon me in virtue of being a part of that law. However, there are some commands that appear in the Old Testament that are repeated in the New Testament. That's because those commands are pointing to a universal moral law that is incumbent upon everyone. For example, there is a command against adultery in the Old Testament, and that command is there because adultery is wrong. And that's why adultery is also prohibited in the New Testament. In the same way, there is a command against homosexual sex in the Old Testament, and that command is there because it's wrong, and that's why it's also prohibited in the New Testament. Now, you might not agree with the conclusion, but at least accurately understand how Christians get to their conclusion rather than creating a straw man. Pointing out how Christians fail to follow a bunch of temporal Mosaic laws, like the prohibition against wearing clothes made of 2 different fabrics, only reveals a lack in understanding of how the covenants work. The Mosaic Law was limited to a time and nation, but objective morality isn't. In other words, Christians follow the moral law, not the Mosaic Law.